that's going to happen when you're the first presenter at 9 a.m. I guess for those who have travelled a long way to be here, thanks so much for taking time out of your schedules to do so. And if you're more local to Bangkok and Thailand, thanks also for considering the topics discussed this over the next couple of days to be important enough to turn out today. I guess, first of all, just say congratulations and thanks to the organisers for putting on such a great program over the next couple of days. And I think certainly the topics and extended dialogue that's going to happen from those discussions are certainly very relevant and important to all of us who are associated with food production and greater sort of industries associated with food. So my name's Dan Hunter, if you don't know. I run a restaurant and own a restaurant called Bray. It's in Australia. It's about an hour and 45 minutes from Melbourne in southwest Victoria. It's in a region known as the Otways. Very beautiful part of the world. Traditionally, you know, the Otways is very beautiful coastline, temperate rainforest, and then in the interior where we are is, I guess, more traditional farming land, typical Australian farming, sheep and cattle. And more interestingly, for myself and for our business, over the past couple of decades, there's been a bit of a migration to that area of people coming to agriculture late in their careers, maybe not coming from an agricultural background, such as me, and doing small-scale, sort of focused, often organic, interesting products, not typical to Australia, not typical to that region anyway. So anywhere from truffles, shiitake farms, nut farms, small-scale dairies, sheep and goat, honey, lots of different things, lots of interesting things. And I guess more importantly within that, also developing, and this is a theme which I think will come out of this weekend or this couple of days as well, but developing a community all involved with similar sort of ideals, and we luckily sit in the sort of the centre of that, which is nice. So Bray is it's a restaurant primarily. That's where we draw our income, but it's a 30-acre property involved in growing food for the restaurant. So very different to a market garden or a typical sort of farm, where your income is derived from many avenues. Our agricultural endeavour has one selling point, and that's the customers that eat in the restaurant. So very focused, very particular. On the 30 acres, we grow a range of things. We've been on the property for about 5 years now. When we bought the property in 2013, it was a small farm then. It had about 40 fruit trees on the property, about 100 olive trees, and a small vegetable garden that had been worked pretty heavily. We've been strictly organic since the day we purchased the property, and that includes things like not using chemicals even in the car park, using, you know, much softer approach in terms of natural fertilisers, using biological methods rather than chemicals, and we really noticed a huge change in the quality and health of the property in that time. Today there's about 300 fruit trees on the property. There's still 120 olive trees. We have chickens, eggs for eggs. We have honeybees. This year we've just started preparing 10 acres that we have put to the side for grain production. So this year looking at growing a small wheat crop for milling for grain in the restaurant, a small indigenous grain crop of a thing called panicum, or it's a native Australian millet, something that was farmed for many, potentially thousands of years prior to white settlement in Australia, and used for bread making at that time as well, and not really grown commercially anywhere in Australia at the moment, but certainly something which has great nutritional and historical value for our region, and something I think which would be quite interesting for a restaurant to grow. And then a legume crop, something to obviously put a little bit of health back in the soil and to, I guess, increase the biodiversity of the soil as well. And then we have our vegetable garden. Vegetable garden, roughly about an acre, so to speak, if you understand what that means. There's about 1,000 lineal metres of garden beds in the property, so about 1 kilometre of garden beds. It's always difficult to explain to often people who live in urban environments what an acre is or what that actually equates to. A lot of seasonal variety, so in some parts of the year we'll grow sort of 50-60%, and then other parts of the year, in a decent summer with rain, about 85-90% of the vegetables that we use in the restaurant can be grown on the property. Excuse me, got a dry mouth. So I guess, you know, what's interesting when you grow a garden? Why would you do that? What's the point? Because we can buy food, and restaurants traditionally in cities particularly, you go to the market and you buy food and you trust that food to be of good origin, to be grown healthily, and to contain the qualities that you require, particularly as a cook, to use in your preparations and in your cuisine. But you miss out on a lot of stuff when you do that, you know. By growing food, you expose yourself to many, many more opportunities as a chef that you definitely don't have when you don't grow food. I'm certainly convinced of the many benefits that a restaurant and kitchen has by growing food. I'm a firm believer that food tastes better when it's been recently harvested. Texturally, it's way better. I mean, if you have had the luxury in your life of picking a legume or a leaf vegetable off the plant and eating it at that moment, and then seeing that same vegetable 6 or 7 hours later and notice the changes in the sugars once it's been taken from its life source, that being the plant and the soil, you'll notice there's a massive change in that time. In a short time, there's a massive change. There's a change from sugar to starch. Legumes are the great example of that. Broad beans are a classic example. You pick a broad bean, it's sweet, it's juicy. Later on, it's crumbly and powdery, okay? And we sort of don't notice that. As consumers, you never see that. As a consumer, we're just at the whim, so to speak, of the food that's in the marketplace. And I guess for me, I wanted to try and get past that situation and, you know, give our customers the luxury of eating just harvested food in the restaurant. Okay, so the reality of a kitchen garden, it's obviously very difficult at times. You have lots of seasonal and climatic variation. And the concept of being self-sufficient, it's something which a lot of restaurants talk about today, particularly those with gardens, about growing these enormous amounts of food and having it for their restaurant. And the truth is, it's impossible. Like, it's bullshit, actually. You cannot grow in a temperate climate with seasonal variation all the food that you consume in a restaurant. So next time you read that article that the media likes to write about, it's not true. You can't do it. In a more tropical environment, you may be able to do so, but in where we are, can we just stop that there, please? We have much more seasonal variation, and you just can't do that. Okay. So, and the thing is, should you want to grow all the food that you serve? And I think you shouldn't. I think one of the things that's important in this dialogue and discussion over the next couple of days is the concept of community. And so if you live in a small community, it's important that you assist and have dialogues with your community. So if your next door neighbour is traditionally been a beef grower, or the guy across the road is an onion farmer, or the guy 3 kilometres away has been a certified organic farmer for 50 years, why would you then try and grow the stuff that they grow when you can buy it from them, support their endeavour, and support your local community at the same time? And often I think that's a bit overlooked, is the concept of we exist inside a small community, and by contributing to their businesses, they then choose to have their family celebrations or their birthdays or whatever in our restaurant, and the money stays in the community, and the community grows and gets stronger, and it's better in terms of relationships as well. It stops the feuding, or it stops the, oh, you did that, or whatever. But it's a way of making sure that community and resources stay within those communities. I think is very important. So I guess one of the key factors in that too is being realistic about what you can and can't grow, and having objectives about what you want to grow, like what's important to you. Is that 10 minutes gone or 10 minutes left? Have another drink. This is gin, by the way. Having objectives about what's important to grow, and I guess that varies. What my business does, what my restaurant does, is different to what one of yours will do, or the objectives required by me are very different to another type of restaurant. And I guess over time, there's been times when we plan shitloads of stuff and realise that there's absolutely no point to it. Got no place within our cuisine, and that takes time, to be honest. I mean, I've been working closely with the garden for about 12 years now, and I guess 6 years probably for someone else, and close to 6 years now planning and managing and now implementing the gardens at Bray. And over time you work out what's best in your climate, what's best for you as a business, what's interesting, and I guess for us, that took a lot of time to get to. But for me, the things that are most important are probably uncommon ingredients that are not in the marketplace, things that have great gastronomic value for a restaurant but aren't particularly great as a commercial crop for a grower. Things that don't travel well. Australia is obviously, and maybe like Thailand as well, but Australia has regional city centres, and then our agriculture is obviously on the outskirts of those things, and particularly because of the size of Australia, things can be further and further away. So you say, oh, I'm using Australian produce, or I use local produce, and it's 9 hours away because it has to come in a truck. So things don't travel that well either. So small strawberries or stone fruit left to ripen on a tree properly till they're actually ripe, not picked green. Things that don't travel well. So we try and focus on things like that. Things that are cost prohibitive if they're grown organically. Obviously, we're in a great period of time where, truthfully, the world over, agricultural in an organic sense is still very, very low. And most food that we buy in most major markets or supermarkets or things like that is not grown organically. And it's much cheaper to do that. And that's traditional. Even the most family-run, sustainability-minded family will still generally use chemicals in Australia. And so you'll see that with say simple things like garlic, like things like particularly in some cuisines, the base of your cuisine are things that could be $60, $70 a kilo on the edge of the season to be organic. So things like that. So we try and grow a lot of those sort of things. Things that are very expensive in the marketplace organically that we can grow on the property. And then I guess coming back to what I just said before is then using around you other people's expertise rather than trying to grow everything. So we can just put that little map back up quickly. I've got 5 minutes left here. Do you see that? Oh, I've got the clicker.
Yeah, forward, backward.
It's probably a bit hard to see, but this is essentially a map of the restaurant. Restaurant being here, our accommodation. This is the front gate. That's our grazing paddock here, where we're doing cropping this year. Small orchard in here, which is a new orchard. Citrus orchard down here, about 50 trees, ranging from exotic sort of Mediterranean citrus to indigenous Australian citrus. Whoops. And then original orchard, olive grove, It's a small truffier here, so there's some oak trees with truffle spores in them. And then our main vegetable garden, honeybees, Indigenous Australian garden, and chickens sort of flow through here. So the planning of all of this is obviously quite intensive. A vegetable garden at home, you put a few things in, and if you have some success, that's great. You eat lettuce, you eat 600 zucchinis when they're in season because they keep flowering. You get sick of zucchinis, and then you give up gardening. That's a typical home gardener, and a basil plant on the windowsill. But with this sort of investment, and with the restaurant chugging along day to day, you need to have success, and so you need to plan, and you need to be productive in that planning. So this is just simple mapping of the fruit trees in the first orchard. That's how we map out the other garden, and then I'm just going to quickly go through here. So this is the main vegetable garden, and although I know it's impossible to see, just like blobs on the page, but essentially the black writing is the current season that's in there, and then the red overlaying writing is what we're planning for the next season. And we update this sort of 4, 5, 6 times a year. And we keep a logbook weekly of what's coming into season. We have 2 sort of main gardeners in the garden, and there's a dialogue regularly. So they'll give me something on a Monday or Tuesday each week, which will say, list everything that's in the garden, the plan for the following week, what's going in, what stage the stuff's in the garden at. So it's just started sprouting, or we had bad germination, or it's ready to pick, or it's gone to seed, or it's bolting and we're going to take it out next week. So all the different stages of the garden, because all of those things, when you aren't growing a commercial crop, you're growing very specifically, they all have benefits. They have benefits that you don't really see in a marketplace. So something sprouting, going to seed in a traditional crop would be harvested out to make space for the next crop. One of the discoveries of working with the garden close like this is discovering parts of the plant from a cook's perspective that you've never seen before and have great benefit, great use. So we might let radishes fully go to seed, and those seeds of the radish might be sautéed or eaten raw or something, and you would never see that because growers need to make space for the next crop. And we do too, but we're more interested in seeing possibilities, and having a garden like this, it creates possibilities. And I guess one of those possibilities is the thing we sort of have talked about recently at the restaurant, and it's the concept of right here, right time, right place cuisine. And that's the interaction you have with the garden each day when you have a garden like this, and you're in the garden and noticing things that you could never have imagined as a cook. And a lot of those dishes that we have in the restaurant have all come from those opportunities, from me being in the space, walking through the garden, tearing a fig leaf, smelling that, eating a strawberry, eating a broad bean, doing those things in a sequence, and all of a sudden imagining a dish or something to go in the restaurant that I know for a fact has never been here before. It's simply the interaction with the space, and all of a sudden something quite great comes out of that sometimes. And I think when you work in that way, the opportunities are really much greater than you can imagine right now, and much greater than I imagined when I first got into working this way. Any questions? Oh, the questions are later, aren't they? Time, look. Everyone look. Thank you.